Welcome to Gleaning Mustard Seeds with Jerrie Barber. Mr. Barber is a preacher, a ventriloquist, a barefoot runner, and writes 2 blogs. When Jerrie communicates, he encourages people, try not to learn very much. Find a mustard seed. In the next few minutes, try not to learn very much. Look for something you can do to move a mountain, remove a stumbling block, or provide a stepping stone for yourself or someone else. And now, here's Jerrie with this week's mustard seed.
Jerrie, I'm thinking about killing my husband. I talked with her several times before. It was early in this afternoon's conversation. There was no increase in the volume of her voice, no rage, and no hesitation. It didn't sound like a new idea. 20 years before, I would have responded anxiously, "You can't do that. You're a Christian. You shouldn't even think of such a thing." But for some time, I'd been thinking of an idea I'd read in Scripture and observed in myself and others. A person doesn't sin because they think about sinning. A person sins because they don't think about sinning enough. Many people think it's a sin to think about sinning. Let me ask some questions. 1, is it a sin to be tempted? The answer is no. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. Jesus was tempted, but he never sinned. Hebrews 4:15. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. 2, is it a sin to think about sinning? 3, have you ever been tempted to commit a sin you've never thought about? It's never entered your mind. 4, is it a sin to want to sin? Are you more tempted to do something you like or to do something that's repulsive? I've never been tempted to eat blood pudding. In Acts 15, Gentiles were commanded to abstain from things strangled and from blood. I've never been tempted to eat blood pudding. Now, if it said banana pudding, that'd be a problem. I like banana pudding. We're tempted to do things we want to do. But according to the Lord's brother James, we haven't sinned at the point of wanting to do something. Listen to what he says in James 1:13-15. Let no one say when he is tempted, I'm being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. A person is still in the temptation stage when he or she is lured and enticed by his own desire or lust. But didn't Jesus say lusting after a woman is as bad as committing adultery with her? No, he didn't say that. He said, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Matthew 5:29. The sin is in the repeated looking at a woman for the wrong motive. It isn't sin to look at a woman. The sin is the continual looking with the intent to lust. That's the sin. Anyone who keeps on looking at a woman to stir up and try to satisfy unlawful desires for her is sinning, whether he looks at her in person or on the internet. So as long as we were talking about her thinking about killing her husband, why she wanted to kill her husband, and thinking of the consequences of killing her husband, we weren't sinning. A person doesn't sin because they think about sinning. A person sins because they don't think about sinning enough. I was ready to try that approach. As calmly as I could continue with such a serious topic, I asked, Why you want to kill him? She talked and talked and talked. She was raising her children with a wicked, abusive man. This wasn't a new idea. She didn't get provoked with a single word or action today. As I've reviewed this conversation, by the time she finished her answer, I had an inclination to volunteer to help her. But remembering my observation, I wanted to think about that more before I joined the movement. Second question, how you going to kill him? Answer, still with deliberateness, I don't know. Well, you've been thinking about it a long time. Surely you have some ideas. Are you going to shoot him? No, no, no. That would be too quick and too kind. I want something better than that. She continued, well, this isn't it. But the best thing I've come up with, if I could find a cabin deep in the woods, tie him to a table where he couldn't move, I'd take a small pair of needle-nose pliers and skin him just a little each day until he dies. That's not good enough, and that's not what I'm going to do, but that's the best thing I've come up with. My follow-up, do you own a pair of needle-nose pliers? No. Next question. Do you plan to go shopping for needle-nose pliers when you get through talking with me today? No. Would you make me a promise that if you consider getting needle-nose pliers or any other instrument for that purpose in the future, you'd call me and we'd talk before you make the purchase? Yes. Do you keep promises? That means if I'm flying somewhere in a plane, you have to wait until I land, call me, and we'll talk before you go shopping. Gail, my secretary, always have a copy of my itinerary. If you tell me you're going shopping for something to kill him, I'll try to contact him and tell him to run. I will not be an accomplice to this plan. Is that agreeable? She answered in the affirmative. When do you plan to do this? To keep this episode within the desired time limits, we'll finish this discussion in the next episode. Please listen next Monday, anytime after 1 a.m. for the rest of the story.
Thank you for listening to Gleaning Mustard Seeds with Jerrie Barber. If you found a mustard seed, send a text or email with the link to a friend. This podcast was brought to you by Gail Barber's book, Fleecy Clouds, One Woman's Story of Surviving and Thriving After Childhood Abuse, by Gail Champion Barber and Alice Sullivan. Gail writes in the introduction to her book, I hope you find a blessing in this book that will add to your life and you can share with others. A difficult beginning didn't ruin the remainder of my life, and it doesn't need to ruin yours either. You can order your book from Amazon. There is a link in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Jerrie looks forward to next week as we continue to collect and plant mustard seeds.